All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on adapting to the speed of skill change focused on strategies for higher education. My name is Remy. I'm part of the marketing group here at Lightcast, and I get to be your host for today. And I am joined by Elena Magrini, who is the head of global research here at Lightcast. And we have a truly international speaker lineup for you today. Elena is joining us from Milan, Italy. So we appreciate her spending some of her evening with us. We're also joined by Dr. Shara LaForge, who is an educational portfolio senior associate manager at the Geese College of Business, part of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And we're also joined by Dr. Nick Real, who's an instructional dean at Cerritos College, which is in Southern California, I believe, part of the greater Los Angeles area down there as well. So very grateful to have them joining us today. They, of course, will be the stars of the show. But I do have a couple of quick logistical items that I'm going to cover for us real quick before I bring them back on. So first of all, here's our agenda for today. I'm going to do some quick housekeeping items, which we're already halfway through. And then I'll run a quick poll question for everyone to kind of level set and also just to get everybody familiar with the poll functionality and how that works. And then we'll get right into the meat of the presentation. Elena will be presenting on the speed of skill change, some key takeaways from that Lightcast research report. And then we'll have Dr. Real sharing future skills today, how Cerritos College approaches using LMI to adapt to the speed of skills change, and talking about the importance of regional collaboration in that effort. And then we'll have Dr. LaForge bringing it home with sharing about some of the work that they're doing at Geese College of Business, some really exciting, innovative work around stackable credentials, which I know a lot of you are really interested in, and taking a skills first approach to the development of those credentials and programs. And then we'll wrap things up with one final poll question at the end, and then as time allows, some Q&A. Speaking of Q&A and a few other items, you'll notice that there is a chat function. So first note, if you're in full screen mode, you may need to deactivate full screen mode in order to see your side panel where these functionalities are located. But there is a chat feature, and we welcome you and encourage you to use the chat to share any thoughts or even just to say hi and who you are and where you're from. That'll be open throughout the presentation. We also have a Q&A feature, which I am going to make sure is open right now, so that throughout the presentation, at any time a question pops into your head, you can go ahead and submit it there. So I encourage you to use the chat. Basically, if you have something to say, go ahead and use the chat. If you have something to ask, a question for our speakers, go ahead and use the Q&A. Submitting it in the Q&A will allow us to keep better track of things on the back end so that we can stay organized and move through your questions at the end of the presentation. And then final note is just that recording is in progress. We are happy to circulate a copy of the recording as well as the slide deck to everyone who's registered to join us today. So no worries there. You'll be able to review and share with your colleagues as needed. So those are the logistical items. And then this is our first poll. We'd just like to do some level setting. I'm curious to know how confident you are currently that your institution is preparing students for the jobs of the future. So I'm going to open that poll. And so it should now be available to you in the side panel. So I'll leave this open for, 20 seconds or so. I do see responses coming in, so that's great. Everybody's located it. And let it run another 10 seconds here. And then when I close it, I'll go ahead and share the results on screen. This is pretty interesting to watch. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Gonna go ahead and see if I can share this. There we are. So this is encouraging. 25, about a quarter of you feeling very confident that you're already preparing students for the jobs of the future. Obviously, the majority, medium, right there in the middle. You know, probably feeling strong in some areas and maybe like you could do better in some others. And then 7% feeling low. So thank you for your honesty. Hopefully by the end of our presentation today, you'll be at least at a medium and maybe even to high as you gather some of these strategies and best practices from our speakers. So thank you very much for participating in that. I am going to close that poll out. And with that, I will go ahead and hand things over to Elena so that she can start sharing some of the research from our latest Lightcast report. So Elena, over to you.
Thank you, Remy, for the introduction, and excited to be here with all of you today to talk about this new piece of research we've just launched at Lightcast. As the title hints, the speed of skill change, the analysis focuses on how much the labor market is changing and how can we keep up with these changes. And the idea behind this report is really that one of the things that we hear a lot here at Lightcast is that the labor market is changing at an unprecedented pace. We know there are a wide range of labor market trends, all affecting the labor market at the same time. We get the rise of AI, the greenification of jobs, and many more trends. And we know they're changing the labor market at a very unprecedented pace, but we don't know how fast this pace is. And also we have a number of questions around what are the jobs that are being affected? Is every job being affected in the same way? What does this mean for different stakeholders? So what does this mean for businesses, for education? What does it mean for the public sector? And also, how can we help adapt to these changes? So we at Lightcast, we sit as part of the discussion around labor market trends and how can we be most helpful around it. And one of the way we thought we could be helpful was by trying to shed some of the light on these changes and try to quantify them so that we can be better prepared to address them. And the way we did this was by creating a skills disruption index, which tries to capture and measure the extent to which different jobs are changing, and especially based on the type of skills that are required in the different roles. The way we did this was by analyzing online job postings data, which is one of the key data sets that we use as part of our work at Lightcast. And in specific, we look at the job postings data in 2021 and in 2024. What we wanted to do was to understand the skills that were required in each occupation in the 2 years. So we wanted to have what we ended up with was a skill profile for each occupation in 2021 and in 2024. And then what we did from there was we tried to identify any changes in the type of requirements that were there in the 2 different years. And after adjusting for a number of other metrics around salary and employment, we came up with a score, with a number that brought together all the different changes within an occupation, so that for each occupation we had one number that gave us the magnitude, the sense of magnitude of change for that occupation. And then we made this number easier to understand by normalizing them on a scale from 0 to 100, with 100 being the number identifying the biggest change in the labor market, and 0 the smallest change. So occupations that scored 100 or towards the top so in the 80s, in the 90s, are occupations that have seen the skills requirements change quite significantly in the past 3 years. And those towards the bottom end have changed the least. So what I'm going to do now is show you some of the key findings from this research. Overall, on average, when we looked at all these scores for all these occupations, what we found that was that the average job has seen a third of the skills required changing between 2021 and 2024. So for around for 3 out of 10 of the skills most required in the jobs have changed in just 3 years. However, this change has not been the same right across the labor market. And actually, when we look at the occupations that have changed the most, 75% of the skills requirements for these jobs have changed in the last 3 years. And if you think about the fact that somebody studying today, it will take entering for a degree, starting a bachelor degree today, will take 3 years to complete their coursework. 75% of the skills in some of the areas of the labor market would look completely different. And on average, still a third of the skills that would have studied for would look different from what they come out. So it's quite a big change. And then the other thing that we did as part of this research was to try to understand a little bit more what is causing these changes and what is causing this disruption. And we found that three main trends, AI, the green transition, and cybersecurity, are playing a significant role in creating this disruption in terms of skills requirement. And not only we are seeing a lot of disruption, but the fourth key finding from this paper is that the pace of the change is accelerating. With the disruption that we have seen and quantified for the past 3 years, be very similar to the ones that we saw for the past 5 years prior. So the same amount of change we've seen between 2021 and 2024, we saw it happening between 2016 and 2025. So same amount of change, but shorter number of years in which this is happening. So things are accelerating. And just to add a little bit more flavor to these key findings, what you find here on this slide is a selection of occupations and the scores assigned to them based on how much their skills requirements have changed. And as you can see, there's quite a range. We have a few occupations that have changed quite significantly. And these occupations tend to be clustered in roles related to professional occupations, the tech sector, media, business-related jobs. Whereas on the other end, we have a number of occupations that haven't changed that much during these 3 years. And these occupations tend to be more the type of occupations that are more typically labor intensive. So here the skills have changed less, but what is really a challenge is finding the talent that gets into these roles. So yes, the labor market is changing at an unprecedented pace, but the pace of this change really varies depending on the sector that you're looking at and the specific roles. And just to give you a little bit more insight on this point, what you see here is, again, a selection of occupation and the difference in the index scores for these occupations in the 5 years between 2016 and 2021, and then in the 3 years between 2021 and 24. And what you see here is that for a lot of the occupation, the black dot is ahead of the orange dot, which means that the occupation has changed more in the last 3 years than it has changed in the 5 years prior to the last 3 years. And so, again, point being here that the disruption, especially when it comes to some parts of the labor market and in particular tech jobs, has increased over the past few years. And yes, as I said at the beginning, there are three big themes that are driving this change. The first one is AI. AI is an area that is constantly changing and very rapidly changing at the minute. And what we are seeing is that this is causing quite significant disruption in the labor market. And that this disruption is not just anymore something that is specific and limited to the IT sector, but we are actually seeing a wide range of non-tech roles also being affected by AI, and not just by any type of AI, but by generative AI in particular. Then the second big theme driving the change is around the growth in demand for green skills. And again, this is a little bit more complicated than the headline in the sense that when we try to look and understand what's the impact of the transition to a greener economy on the labor market, we are seeing that there are a number of new jobs that are being created, but alongside that, there's also a longer list of jobs that when you look at the title, they are exactly the same jobs as they were before, but the skills within those jobs have changed and they're more and more often requiring green skills. So this is something that we refer to as the greenification of the labor market. And then lastly, cybersecurity. Demand for cybersecurity is booming pretty much across every industry. And this is pushing up demand both for roles and skills related to cybersecurity. So where does this leave us? Well, wait and see is no longer an option here. That's the key takeaway that I take from the research that we've done here. And so if wait and see is no longer an option, then we need to adapt to this speed of change. And so we started thinking about what does this mean for different sectors and different stakeholders that we work with. And I'd like to share some of the ideas that we have in terms of higher education sector. Three key words to highlight: agility, collaboration, and data-driven insights. And each of them can help adapt to the speed of change by approaching it from a different angle. Agility is key in terms of helping being more adaptable and flexible so that we can be more responsive to the changes in the labor market. And this can look like many different things when it comes to higher education. It could be about flexibility in terms of provision, in terms of modes of learning, as well as more broadly about fostering culture around lifelong learning and continuous development. The second point is around collaboration, and here each stakeholder plays a key role, but we are stronger together, and in order to adapt to these changes, we need all the stakeholders in the ecosystem, the businesses, higher education sector, other education providers, public sector, all working together to align to this agenda. And then lastly, because of the pace of change, because things are happening so rapidly, we need an evidence base that can help us track changes and see their evolution over time so that we can be agile in the way that we respond, and also the collaboration is all done in a way that is data-driven. So I just want to conclude with this slide before passing it on to Dr. Rial about how Lightcast can help in this space. And a lot of the questions that we are asked in this context are around how can we adapt to these changes? Where do we start? How can we ensure that we are agile? How do we align with the latest labor market needs? And we have a bunch of tools where we can help in relation to this. And in particular, the things that we can help with are around aligning academic offering to the latest labor market trends, exploring different types of provisions, as well as strengthening that partnerships with the industry sector as well. So I'm going to stop there and pass it on to Dr. Rial for actually some real case studies on how this will work in practice.
Well, thank you and welcome, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I wanted to give you a little bit of practical information about what we do at Cerritos College. So we are a two-year college in Los Angeles County in Southern California. We offer mostly two-year degrees, certificate of achievement, and we've recently started offering bachelor degrees. The first one that we have is in dental hygiene. To give you an idea, the size of the college, we have about 20,000 students. So we started using labor market information in 2012. That's when we first got our license for EMSI, the ancestor of Lightcast, and started looking at our program and making sure they were aligned with industry needs, mostly in response to the Perkins funding that we were getting from the federal government, making sure that we were using the money appropriately. In 2016, the state of California started giving career technical education programs special funding. So that amount has varied. It's around $250 million per year for the different colleges in the states, community colleges in the state. And after that, when they saw the success of that, they also started it in high school. So there's also a strong workforce program for city in high schools in California. In 2023, our region, we used to be Los Angeles and Orange County. Now we are just Los Angeles County. We started refining program requirements, making sure that there was no undue competition, making sure that we were aligning the offerings to actual jobs. So that's fairly recent, that different type of organization that we have. And to zoom back to the state of California, as you know, the state is very large. Our gross domestic product is equivalent to that of Germany, so it's a pretty big economy. And Los Angeles County, where I'm at, it's basically the size of the economy of the Netherlands or Saudi Arabia. It's in kind of like in that neighborhood. So we have to tailor our programs and courses to match the job market needs. The community college next to me, I can go there on my bicycle. Actually, I'll go there faster on my bicycle than in my car because of the traffic problems we have here in LA. But what I'm trying to say is that there are 19 community colleges just in the county of Los Angeles. So using real-time labor market information is important for curriculum development, for making sure that the offerings match actual jobs, and looking at it afterwards, making sure we do data analytics, making sure that we've done our job is also important. So the Center of Excellence that was funded from that initiative from the state, there's one office in each region. So ours is Los Angeles County. So our COE director, Center of Excellence in LA County, Luke Mayer, provides the colleges with a report. Now, I just screenshot the beginning of the report. The report is usually 10, 20 pages long. They do use Lightcast, and they provide a pretty detailed report when faculty are interested in creating a new program. And the part that might be interesting to you is that they either endorse or they can also not endorse a program, and that's based on, is there a supply gap, meaning like, are there more jobs than the number of, let's say, certificate of achievements that we produce in the region? Does it meet the living wage? And for that, they use for entry-level living wage in the 25th percentile. And does it meet the education objective, meaning that that's the type of job that's offered where you do require some college degree, but you don't have to have a bachelor's degree. That's kind of the middle skill type of jobs that we are targeting at the two-year college. And if it's an emerging occupation, meaning that there's, let's say, less than 100 jobs offers published on, let's say, Lightcast, we have specific criteria for that, right? So the COE comes up with a report, very detailed report, tells us like, yeah, this is something that we should pursue, based on the collaboration of all the colleges, and there's data to support the need. So taking the example of Cerritos College and something that we developed a few years ago, we developed a program as entry-level quick service technician. We've always had more advanced programs for bumper-to-bumper technicians, if you want, for automotive repair. but we saw the need to create something that was getting you a job quickly. You could get into the job market, and maybe the student could come back and take classes at night to take the rest of the classes, but wanted to get a job right away. And for that, Lightcast has some good information, which is basically which skills are showing up in those job offers that are more important to the employer. So that allows us to align the classes to the actual skills that are required. So you can see, for example, brake and suspension. Those are typical entry-level jobs in either in dealership or other kind of organizations. And the certificate that we have, short certificate, 19 units, matches those type of skills that are needed that Elena was talking about earlier. And what the software also allows us to see is that which companies are posting for those jobs, right? So Pep Boys, if you're not familiar with it, provide this type of quick service for automotive repair. We didn't quite realize before we started that program how many jobs were in that area. We were very familiar with the number of jobs at the dealership, national dealership level, but not necessarily aware that there were so many jobs for like a lower set of skills, but that could still get people on the path, and it would still give people a decent wage and an avenue for growing into that job. So that's one benefit. We'll get the list of the actual companies, industry that are looking for those jobs. So our curriculum and the certification is aligned with the actual job opportunities for our students. And we do that for every program. I'm using auto repair as an example. Another thing that Elena talked about is artificial intelligence. In our bumper-to-bumper programs, for example, for Ford program or General Motor program, those ones were the only one to offer it in LA County and even in the broad Southern California region. For General Motors, we started that in 1982. We are basically working on our 42nd cohort. For Ford, we started in 1987. We're on our 38th cohort. Those are programs where the students basically are coming here, doing the work for 2 years, and walking away with not only the certification that you would see in industry, but also the one that are needed specifically at those dealerships. They're starting more and more to see where AI is coming into play because of the different characteristics of the cars today. So, for example, in predictive maintenance, it's no longer a generic algorithm that provides the recommendation. It depends on how many cold starts you had on the car, where the temperature range is outside, inside the engine. On fault diagnostics, it's become very, very sophisticated. It's no longer just the plain onboard diagnostic system. It provides specific codes on top of that to find a root cause analysis and to get to sensor data, not just modules and swapping modules. It actually allows you to diagnose the actual fault and where and why. It provides repair recommendations that are customized based on those codes and specifically the measurement levels that we get with picoscopes on those modules, on those sensors. In augmented reality, slowly but surely, the younger generation of students is interested in that. So it's more for entry level at our college. We provide them with that environment so they can get a better idea of what automotive repair is. On training, if you want, LMIs that are created by GM and by Ford are very sophisticated and provide virtual scenarios for students to practice that are using AI. And then, as you know, if you've been at the dealership recently, their inventory management, their customer service, a lot of that is also being enhanced with artificial intelligence. So we do have to provide those skills to our students when they come here on our campus. The future proofing of education also is important in terms of what qualifications are needed for the job. So if it's in IT, for some jobs it might be the A+ certification. For some other jobs it may be a different certification. For automotive repair, which is what we're looking at here, you need to have a valid driver's license. And younger generation maybe didn't really see the need to go get their driver's license. When they come here, we tell them, to work at a dealership, you will need a driver's license. So if you don't have one, you have to go get one because you're not going to be able to be employed. And that's a parallel to the A+ certification for computer repair. For us, it's not necessarily linked to the outcomes of the curriculum, but it is something that's important to have. So when Lightcast is able to see that that's required, it allows us to tell the students, no, this is not just us telling you this. This is data that's been validated by external software companies. So this is important for us. So we do update our curriculum based on what we see. It also provides us opportunities to connect with alumni on the alumni part of the Lightcast software. And in the long term, it makes sure that our students can evolve in their career, they can move up the career ladder, and they stay connected to what we do. And we provide them with the tools to be able to move up in life. So overall, the agility, the collaboration, and the data-driven insight that Elena was talking about, that's definitely what we're trying to do here at Cerritos College. I've used the automotive program as an example, but it's true of all the programs we have. We have about 60 career technical education programs here at Cerritos College, and we make sure that all that is incorporated into those programs. So thank you again for giving me a chance to show and talk to you about automotive program. Everybody has to be involved. That's the key to success. Regional collaboration on the campus, collaboration with industry, and that's how we make progress. So thanks again for allowing me to present. I'm going to pass the baton to Dr. Cheryl Laforge, who can give us more information about expanding access to business education. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. As he said, I am going to talk a little bit about business education. I'm coming from the Gies College of Business at the University of Illinois. We take our land-grant mission as an institution and as a college very seriously, and that focuses a lot on expanding access to business education. We are currently serving about 9,000 students in any given year, and a lot of those are in our graduate programs, especially in our online graduate programs. These are truly global programs. I looked at the data yesterday. We have students this semester in all 50 states and representing 108 different countries. So when we're thinking about the labor market, especially in our graduate programs, we have to think a little bit differently, and that's why Lightcast has been so useful for us. In terms of where my place is in the college, we're part of a team called Content and Educational Portfolio Strategy. A lot of people are very interested in this when I talk about the work that we're doing. We really support the entire portfolio of academic products and programs that are available at Gies, and that is for everything from non-credit education and professional learning all the way up to both our residential and online graduate programs, and basically everything in between those types of programs. We do a lot of content and curriculum research, and that includes evaluating new programs, recommending new programs, recommending the redevelopment of courses or the development of new courses. I like to think of ourselves as being a kind of an internal consultancy for Gies faculty, staff, and administrators. I've written a little bit about the work that we've done with Lightcast before in a case study, and so I wanted to profile two projects that are newer and are still very relevant, I think, and are very skills focused from the start, which I think is useful for the topics in Elena's results earlier in the presentation. So I think an important thing to point out, and I know a lot of people are very interested in this, is that our graduate programs, especially our online graduate programs, are fully stackable, which means that a student can start with a free online MOOC that is available through Coursera. They can stack that participation into a 4-credit course with Gies. They can stack that course into a graduate certificate or a degree, and kind of every combination of those program types. The free online courses to graduate certificate part of this stackability gives us a lot of freedom and kind of room to innovate and think about redeveloping courses or products and programs a lot more rapidly. Our graduate certificates are relatively new. The first batch that we released, about 13 of them, were really based on existing curriculum that we are offering in our MBA, MSM, and MSA accountancy programs. But we're starting to bring entirely new products online that are outside of those existing courses. One is a collaboration with our ACES department, which is an agribusiness and sustainable food production economics graduate certificate, which is very exciting. And the one I want to talk about today is our Healthcare Innovation, Design, and Entrepreneurship Graduate Certificate. This was a collaboration across a lot of different units on campus, including our college, our Carle, Illinois College of Medicine, our engineering school, the Siebel Center for Design, and Mayo Clinic is kind of an external partner. If you're not familiar with the Carle, Illinois College of Medicine, they're actually the first engineering-based college of medicine, and a big part of their curriculum is about creating new products and ways to address shortcomings in the healthcare system. So it seems like a really good fit given our strength in engineering, that kind of focus in the med school, and then our real strength in entrepreneurship as well. So ultimately, the idea here is that we would give students the skills that they'd be able to employ to solve these healthcare problems with really innovative results. This was an entirely, brand new program. It's in a relatively emerging area. There is a zip code for healthcare innovation, but it's pretty new. And so a lot of the work was finding out what other programs are out there that are doing this. What does that look like? What is the potential job market for it? Because it's not necessarily that I can search on Lightcast for a healthcare entrepreneur. I had to think about ways to be a little bit creative about that when we were trying to support the development of this program. So one of the things that we really did at the start is we thought about skills alongside knowledge areas and course content. And the way that we kind of did this is I worked really closely with our Lightcast rep at the time to try to figure out, how can we get at the kind of jobs that a person who finishes this graduate certificate is going to be interested in. We cross-referenced that with competitor data and what peer institutions were doing in this area. And then we identified what I called as must-teach and then differentiating skills. And we used those skills as the starting point of conversations with faculty when they were developing the courses. So as you're seeing on the screen here are the must-teach skills and the percentage of job postings that reference these different skills. And our differentiating skills are here. We ultimately decided to really focus on the must-teach skills as the must-have in our program, and the differentiating skills popped up along the way in the development of the courses. That was great. Having this data, having this skills-first approach allowed us to continue to return to those discussions as we were working with faculty. Here are just a couple samplings from the course mappings that we were providing to faculty along the way. So when they were developing the course descriptions and the learning outcomes for the different courses, we were also asking them, can you tell us what skills are being taught in this course so that we can be very transparent and upfront about those. On the right was kind of the overall program mapping against skills, and that was also useful because as we were kind of doing early drafts of the program and the courses, I could go back and say, hey, I actually don't think that you have addressed project management yet. Can you tell me if it is being addressed in one of these courses, or is that something that we need to build into the curriculum as we're building these programs out? It really, I think, having those skills allowed for it to just be a known part of the conversation that we were having with faculty. At the undergraduate level, we're trying to now take what we're learning about stackability and bring it to the undergraduate level. We are very restrained from space in terms of our residential majors, and so where we're thinking about expanding access is with our non-majors. We have a business minor that's very popular. We serve about 2,600 students in any given semester and have about 4,000 alum of this minor. And they are learners from everywhere across campus, from advertising and engineering to agribusiness and fine arts and everything in between. And what we were finding as we were working on the early stages of this project is that our internal staff was saying that student complaint was that there's not a lot of purpose, or they didn't really know how to pick courses or think about what they were doing within the business minor. And so our team was thinking, how can we create career and skill-aligned pathways for learners that would help build that purpose, but also help students be prepared for after graduation? And we sort of created or are working through a model of undergraduate stackability, where students can put together different micro-credentials. Our first is going to be business fundamentals, which is really just like foundational business knowledge and skills that could be paired with different skill or career-aligned micro-credentials. And those combined would award you the business minor, and you could pair that with your undergraduate degree in another field and really end up being a very well-rounded graduate who has not only the content and practical knowledge from your major, but also this business-specific knowledge that is aligned with Lightcast and labor market data. We've really thought a lot about the different considerations about how we wanted to know what micro-credentials to develop. And what we really landed on is these in-demand careers and student careers after graduation. I think there's a lot of different approaches that you could use with micro-credentials, but that's what we landed on. And it helped us to define and think about how we would use the labor market data. Probably on a lot of your campuses, you have access to something like first destination surveys or success surveys that have students responding where their first jobs after graduation are, both in terms of the companies, but also the career titles that they're going into. So we went and pulled that data for our business minor students and looked for commonalities across all of the different colleges that would be kind of easy to create micro-credentials that were aligned with those occupations. So our first one, as I said, is business fundamentals. That's really aligned around the idea of entry-level management skills, your ability to see across the different kinds of disciplines within a business, from accounting and finance to marketing and management. And we learned about the particular skills and competencies that we wanted to include in these criteria by pulling Lightcast job posting analytics data. So we looked both in Illinois and US, the really broad occupational category overview, and then started to restrict the data to looking at bachelor's degrees and experience levels so that we were giving students an idea of the skills that they needed in their first job, but maybe not their second or third job. When we were creating that, we then kind of mapped those competencies and skills that we found in the Lightcast data. And if this is a little small on my screen, but you'll be able to see those slides later on. When we thought about finance and accounting, there were all other smaller skills that were involved in that broad competency area that was coming from the Lightcast data. And we looked at the courses that we're already offering and said, where are students getting those skills? You know, they're getting the ability to read a financial statement in Accountancy 200, which is our non-major accountancy introduction to accountancy course. They're learning coaching or sales planning or marketing in our BADM 320 course, which is Introduction to Marketing. So we aligned course options within those, and then also thought if there's a skill or a competency that we can't meet with our current course offerings, are there industry certifications or other kind of things that we can layer on top of these micro-credentials? Because these are not transcriptable credentials. They're going to be awarded badges and digital certificates. So we have some flexibility to think across both coursework and curriculum, but also kind of external things to include. So we started with business fundamentals. We're going to be awarding our first batch of about 900 of these micro-credentials at the beginning of April, and then we'll be rolling out the rest of our portfolio of micro-credentials after that, and learning about how we can really think about helping students to tell the story of what they've learned in their business courses through these micro-credentials and what skills that they've gained. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Remy for a poll in our Q&A.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. LaForge. Thank you, everyone, to all of our speakers and presenters. It's been a lot of great information, and we've had some really good questions come in, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say about those. Before we get into that, I do have one last poll. So this poll, which I'm going to open right now, is basically your opportunity to help us help you. So if you've been intrigued or you're interested in anything that you've seen today, but you want to dive deeper or have a more personalized walkthrough from someone at Lightcast, helping you understand what would this look like for your institution, what are the specific data sets or tools that have been talked about, and how does that map onto the work that you're doing, just let us know. So that's what this poll is for. So you can go ahead and respond yes, and someone from Lightcast will be in touch to follow up with you and learn more about what you're interested in and how we can help. And if you're good for right now, or you just want to explore resources on your own, you can go ahead and click that no button, and that is perfectly fine too. We appreciate you being on with us today and listening and learning. So I'll leave that running for a minute, and while that is going, we can start to get into Q&A. I'd like to begin. Let's see. There were a couple of questions that came in earlier in the presentation, so I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So Dr. Rial, I believe these questions came in during your portion of the presentation. There's a question about, are these tuition or contract-based training programs? And I'm not sure which exact example that's referring to, possibly the automotive, but if you could speak to that tuition or contract-based training programs from what you shared earlier.
Yes, so I would say the vast majority of what we do here is tuition-based. In California, the tuition is heavily subsidized, so it ends up not costing that much to the student. But we also do offer contract-based education. That's usually for skills that are more kind of like at the micro-credential level, I would say. But most of what we do is towards like the 2-year degree. That's our main goal.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then another really interesting question came in that I'd love to hear both of you speak to. How often is the curriculum revisited based on the data retrieved from Lightcast? So maybe Dr. Rial, if you could start, and then Dr. LaForge, I'd love to hear each of you speak to that. What's sort of the cadence or the frequency with which you're able to go back and implement changes based on the data?
So for us in California, it's a 2-year cycle. It's required by the Board of Trustees. And it doesn't mean that each program constantly changes it every 2 years, but every 2 years they're required to look at it. And there are some departments where things change very quickly. So we have one department that does engineering design using SolidWorks. A lot of the skills change there. There's new software every year. Where there's some other department where it's not changing as much, so the curriculum is not changing as fast. Now, how long does it take to get through the state, going from the local curriculum to the state of California? That cycle is quite long. It's about 1 year. So the departments that know that they have to do that, they're basically on it constantly, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Dr. LaForge?
Yeah, at Geese, we're probably at about a 2 or 3 year redevelopment cycle. After every run of the course, they do meet with a team that includes their learning designer and another staff member from our team just to make small tweaks. But like a real big refresh of the course involves a longer process where we do some competitor analysis, we talk with a faculty member, and then we pull labor market data to make those recommended changes. And that's done in conjunction with our educational product managers who work really closely and have really well-developed relationships with those faculty. About 2 or 3 years, sometimes departments will more heavily weight their preferences on how they're assigning faculty to redevelopment, and sometimes when we're bringing on a new program, they might have to step aside on those redevelopment projects and focus on the creation of new courses.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great, thank you. And Dr. LaForge, sticking with you for a moment, a question came in during your part of the presentation. How did you arrive at the differentiating skills? Was that a kind of a decision you made on your own, or is that through Lightcast? And I'm curious in that too, because obviously within the tool, there's a section called differentiating skills, but I didn't know if those came from there or if that was kind of some analysis you did on your own.
Yeah, I think you rolled out differentiating skills as we were doing this project, so it kind of predates your like that component of Lightcast.
Okay.
What we did is we evaluated, I think, more than 130 course descriptions and program descriptions and pulled out skills that were covered by our competitors and our peers in this area. And then we cross-referenced those with the Lightcast data about the job postings. And so the must-teach skills were ones that were clearly covered by our competitors and clearly in demand in the labor market. The differentiating skills were ones that were in demand in the labor market, but maybe not as heavily covered in our competitor institution offerings. And so it was a place where we would be able to advertise potentially the fact that they were getting those skills as something unique about our program. So we ended up not focusing heavily on the differentiating skills, but I can tell you something like data analysis is integrated into this program and some of the other pieces too. So that's the idea that, in the marketing that we provide of this graduate certificate, we could really highlight that that's a skill that they're getting by coming to Geese that they might not get by going with one of the competitor institutions.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So in your context, these are skills that differentiate our program from.
Yes, and I know that differentiate, I think, is a more of like a job or like a applicant specific thing within Lightcast. So.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Another question for both of you. This was submitted ahead of time, but would love to hear you speak to it. And you've touched on it in your presentations, but recommendations for developing programs that are ahead of labor market data. For example, emerging or converging fields that may not have associated SIPs or SOCs. And again, you've both touched on it a little bit, but if you could kind of just speak to that once more, maybe Dr. Ray, I'll start with you, and then Dr. LaForge.
And that is something that's hotly debated in our regional meetings, for LA County. And we rely heavily on employers providing us the data and the information, right? So if we have several employers that are saying, this is a new job, we need to hire 10 here, 20 here, 30 here, that weighs in our decision to recommend it as a council, because all colleges in our area, 19 of them in the county, have a vote, and we actually vote on those matters. And I would say that when there's like less than 100 jobs in the data, we're kind of reluctant into moving forward. But if there's compelling evidence from the employers, that's when we say, okay, we see it, this is upcoming, and then we approve it.
And on my side, I think we work closely with faculty. So usually when we're engaging in a project like this, we might provide faculty with a list of current occupations and job titles that we think are relevant to the major or the program or the course. And they often weigh in and say, our students don't go into this area, you can cross that one off. Have you thought about this as a job title? Especially in a business school, we're kind of lucky that a lot of them still have industry connections, and so they are thinking about where things are going into the future. And I think you can really lean on your faculty if you're working with them closely to think about and just inquire about what they're hearing broadly about how hiring is going in their field.
Right. Great. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I actually am going to share something in the chat right now, so everyone can look at that link if you want. But what I just shared is an article talking about, I think another answer to that question is this is one of the reasons why skills data is so valuable, is it sort of transcends, it's not dependent on SIP SOC mapping. It's something that if you have access to job postings data and you can look at the skills in those job postings, you can see these trends emerging in real time. Again, this is part of why Elena's research is skills based as well, and looking at skills disruption is because that's kind of a early warning indicator that lets you get ahead of those trends. So great question. We had another question on experiential learning components. Was curious if you could speak to, is that something that's required, recommended? How are you thinking about experiential learning when it comes to the programs at your institutions? Maybe Dr. LaForge, start with you.
Yeah, at our graduate level, our online programs use a model where there's largely asynchronous content, but then synchronous live sessions. And that's a place where groups get together and really work on real world problems. These are run by our full-time faculty, and they bring in this kind of work and problems and case studies that they can work through. In a lot of our areas, we also have a capstone that's assigned to each of our focus areas or specializations, where students will really focus in on something very specific in strategic leadership and management and work through a project with a group. There's also some capstone options outside of that. We have one where students work with Illinois College of Medicine students on helping them with the business side of their innovations that they're creating on the medicine side. So there's a handful of options for students who are in our programs.
Great, thank you.
And I would say that for us, it goes from having guest speakers or talking, having professionals come into the classroom to talk about the world of work. That's kind of like on the light side, to the heavy side, like for example, what I was presenting on General Motors and Ford, where the students are actually required to get a job at the dealership before they apply to the program, or in the first week or two that they are in our program, and where it's required to do work experience classes at the dealership along taking the classes at Cerritos College. So it can be very heavy in the case of specific cohort program for those manufacturers, to something more light in some other departments where it's more like guest speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. Another question I wanted to make sure we got to, and I think Dr. LaForge, you were going to speak to this. There was a question that came in about applying these principles at teaching-oriented, more liberal arts colleges, and maybe unique challenges or opportunities doing this kind of work in that context. Is that something you'd like to speak to?
Yeah, I can do it briefly. In my previous life, I was a tenured faculty member in political science, and so I have kind of an on-the-ground experience with how to talk to faculty about these kind of issues. I think with liberal arts faculty and those who aren't in more professional fields, it is difficult to have these conversations about skills, especially because they're so tied to job market. And I think there is a lot of background about why that's a difficult conversation that we won't get into. But a couple of things that I have thought about in terms of those conversations are sometimes, I guess I would say, most faculty know they're teaching skills in some way in their courses. They maybe don't know which skills to highlight or elevate. And so I think if you can do the work of working with faculty, looking at their content, looking at their curriculum and saying, did you know that you're actually teaching cross-cultural communication in this course? And it's really in demand. Could you highlight that? Could you talk about that in your courses so students know that they're developing that skill? If you're not familiar with the transparency in learning and teaching TILT framework, I highly recommend it. This is a broad project about elevating and being transparent about the skills and knowledge that students are gaining as part of your assignments. And it has a lot of good research behind it about its impacts on first generation and underserved populations that I think will speak to a lot of faculty who are at teaching and liberal arts institutions, because so many of them are there to really help students. And I think that's a good entry because a lot of faculty respond well to research too when you provide it to them.
Right, that's great. Thank you very much. So I'm sort of multitasking, looking at some of our questions, and I know we're at time. So probably what we'll do, there are some really good questions coming in still. If we didn't get to yours, I apologize for that, but we will follow up with you. So, and there's a couple questions, Dr. LaForge, specifically addressed to you. If it's okay with you, I'll work with you to maybe get those answered offline via email or something after this. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I just want to thank everyone so much for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers. Again, our research lead, Elena, all the way from Italy. Thank you for being online with us. And yeah, just thank you for the great engagement and the great questions. And you can look for some follow-up resources and materials and responses to further questions as well. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your Thursday and a great rest of the week. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.